You are listening to Let's Be Honest with Just Johnda. Hello, everyone. This is one of our special Just Johnda LBDs, also known as a legal breakdown. On this episode, I appeared on the Tisa Tells show, which is on YouTube, and a link to the show is going to be in the info section for this particular episode. But given how large this story is and continues to grow, if that's even possible, I thought that it would be a disservice to my listeners not to also have a replay here on this channel. Now, bear in mind that I appeared on this show and we began having this conversation, which, as Tisa indicates, is going to continue. We will be doing an update to this. I appeared on this show about, I want to say it was around November 9th or 10th. So at that point, there was still a lot of information regarding the Astroworld tragedy that was still emerging. However, the overall issues that we discussed are 100% relevant because what we really focused a lot on was people's questions as it relates to liability, who may be liable, why they may be liable. We talked about the question of criminal liability as it relates to Travis Scott. Live Nation as a corporation. People were like, can corporations be sued? Well, we know corporations can be sued. I'm sorry, but can corporations be charged criminally? The technical answer is yes. Is it something that happens very often? No, because who goes to jail? And at the end of the day, ultimately, what happens in any situation where a corporation is taken down, let's say that there is government action against a corporation, as we've seen, particularly as it's related to pharmaceutical companies, tobacco companies, and some others, what tends to happen on the criminal side is basically the same thing that would happen on the civil side with a few more spanks on the hand. Obviously there would be huge monetary penalties because that's really the way that you get them. The often dismantling of it, certain individuals who were involved could no longer be involved in the corporation, even if it was allowed to stand. These are things that would happen on the civil side. Number one, they would also happen if the government were to get involved in a variety of ways in terms of determining that a corporation was a public nuisance or committing activities that, if done by an individual, would be considered criminal anyway. Everything from SEC involvement to the IRS. Again, there's just so many ways of dismantling corporations if that is the choice that's made, and often it's not. So, at any rate, these are the types of questions. Of course, we didn't get as technical as I just did, but these are the types of questions that have continued to come up. So that Tisa and I talked a lot about that. We also paid attention to the chat and tried to answer some questions from listeners, especially as it relates to Travis Scott. I think there's still a lot of questions as to why he's viewed as someone who could be just as liable as Live Nation. And I answer that question within the episode as well, because I think that once you get beyond the fact that someone is not just a performer, in their situation, then you get a better understanding as to why they are being looked at. It's not just a matter of whether or not he could see what was going on from the stage. We're now talking about the fact that if this is your event, what does that mean? So I hope that you all enjoy this episode, even though it's a bit heavy. Just a couple of quick notes of things that have happened since this happened. Um, there are over 150 lawsuits as of a few days ago. It was 177, with amounts sought being well over $2 billion. And of course, everybody and their mom is being sued. Obviously, at the top of every page on every lawsuit is Live Nation and Travis Scott. But of course, there is a laundry list of other individuals on there. Also, an update since we did the episode, there are now 10 individuals who are deceased. There still is no word on where the injuries stand in terms of the level of the or the seriousness of the injuries of some of those individuals whose information has not been released. So sadly, I hate to say stay tuned, but it's the reality of it is that as it relates to some to other victims, we are in a wait and see mode. And some of the many lawsuits, the ones that aren't just random folks who just happen to be at the concert, some of those many lawsuits are probably going to answer a few of those questions as well. So now, here's the show.
Here we have the lovely Just Johnda. How are you doing, darling? I have my legal.
How are you?
I'm good. Listen, when y'all see these glasses come out, y'all know a be mean business. Okay, so let's get back into this. We got the criminal defense lawyer, Just Johnda extraordinaire. All I have to say is Travis Scott is innocent. All right, go.
Well, you know what? I got to be honest, and this is where it pays that you've got a buddy that does both sides, because I think that we're really, at the end of the day, not going to be talking about criminal liability when it comes to Travis Scott. Folks are going to bat that around a little bit, of course. I mean, when people die, and I hate to call it that way, but we're keeping it real,
I know.
right?
I feel you. It feels so
It is. It feels
disrespectful to say
nasty
that,
to say.
but it's a word. It's still no way to get it right.
Yeah, and that's what we're dealing with. And you
Mhm.
guys probably remember last time I'm playing with my light a little bit, but we're gonna get it right this time. But at any rate, when people die,
Hold on,
the
let me check
public
somebody out.
the public
Hold
wants
on.
somebody to pay. Okay, that's fine, because I'm
No, please continue. Continue. I'm sorry, I was talking out loud. Go on. I've said, let me get Kamon Rainer's ass out of this chat. Go continue. Continue. I'm sorry.
Oh, not a problem at all. In fact, I'm making sure that I send this out to folks, because we know a lot of people want to talk about this situation because it's horrible. So I think the first thing that everybody starts to think about right away is jail, or because somebody did something bad, and it makes sense, right? I mean, it's horrible. And it's a number of people. Unfortunately, we don't know if the now 9 people is going to be the final death toll, because there really hasn't been a lot of clarity on how serious all of these other 300 plus people's injuries are. But we know that some of them had to be pretty darn serious,
Yes.
especially considering that this wasn't like everybody had heat exhaustion. This was a full on, people got stomped out essentially.
Yes.
So,
Stomped
and I
out,
know that there's
smothered.
at least one young child that people have mentioned, probably because they're so young, that is in an induced coma. I believe he's 9 or 10. and
As
hopefully
Leslie.
he makes it. But I bring that up just to point to the nature of the seriousness of other injuries that could unfortunately result in fatalities that have not occurred yet. So,
Mhm.
but back to the whole notion of criminal liability, that's hard in a situation like this because it certainly, if they really want to, right? Because sometimes we all know that there are cases where you go, okay, the prosecution must have really, really wanted to prosecute a case, or maybe felt some pressure because fact wise, mm,
Mm.
uh, to me, this is one of those situations because you would be talking something along the lines of, say, like criminally negligent homicide, that type of stuff, which again, even though it removes that whole piece of intent, because that's just out the window. I mean, you definitely wouldn't be dealing with a malice murder type situation because where are you going to get intent from? And again,
Well,
we're only
I
talking about in
want
terms
to.
of Travis.
Okay, but with Travis, and I want to piece this to you guys, right?
Okay.
So you make a good point about where would you get the piece for intent. Let's just play devil's advocate because I see a lot of you guys in the comments saying, Travis is one of the promoters. He was rallying them up, this, that, and the third. But my whole thing was when you see intent, right? Gross negligence. And to everybody else, I make this analogy to make it simple to you guys, right? I walk up to Johnda, right? And I hit her in the head with a bat, right? I'm only using you because, whatever, right? I hit you in the head with the bat and you pass away from injuries. That would be, and I planned to hit you in the head with the bat. That would be considered I had the intent to 100% hurt you because a bat connecting to someone's head only in so many ways. Let's just say I decide to put a blindfold on and I decide to get behind my car and I just want to go driving with my eyes blindfolded. Okay, fine. People get ran over. Do I mean to run you over? No. Did I plan to run you over? No. But you can make the argument, and this goes into gross negligence, that gets into criminal
Mhm.
gross negligence or negligence, gross negligence and homicide. What did you expect to happen
Yes.
when you enter the car, put a blindfold on, and go driving down the street? Could prosecution make that argument to Travis Scott because of his history that you guys have all pointed out? Y'all go let us miss anything in the comments.
They sure don't.
Yeah, at all. But you guys have pointed out that Travis has incited violence. There is a famous video going around where because someone stole his shoe, he incites a crowd to beat the guy up, and then he hits the guy himself and spits on him 2 times. Could they actually say, listen, this is proof of Travis's ill intent? He has a history. It is his character to incite violence. Could they make that argument? And if they could, with your history as a criminal defense, how much weight do you think that will happen? Your past actions as a performer.
Well, it of course is with anything. It's going to depend on the judge because a good defense attorney like myself, would the first before that trial even got started, I'd be like, motion and lemonade. We want that knocked out. No past actions, too prejudicial. All of that. If anybody has been paying attention to some of the trials that are going on now, because two of the biggest trials, like of the decade, are going on right now, the Rittenhouse trial and the trial of the individuals who killed Ahmaud Arbery. Um, then if you watched any of that, then the whole world got a really good crash course in motions practice,
Yes.
particularly motions in lemonade, which are, we want to limit your ability or to keep stuff out entirely. So as a defense attorney, I would absolutely be saying there's no value in bringing this, or there's no probative value in terms of adding to the case. It would be far too prejudicial, all of that. So those are the types of arguments that I would be making. And by the way, everyone,
Okay.
I'm not being rude. If I'm looking down, it's because I'm sending this out.
No, it's okay. Now, I want to ask you this though. When you're saying that, like, okay, but let's just say that For whatever reason, the judge is paid off, and he
Man.
literally says, "We don't care, Johnda, attorney Esquire. We are the counselor. Please, objection overruled. We're not limiting. You know what? Let's bring it in. If they could actually get this previous evidence in, how damaging do you think that would be, or would that be something more damaging in the court of public opinion? But when it comes to its liability, it really wouldn't move the needle very far."
It would be damaging to both. I mean,
Okay.
obviously damaging in the court of public opinion, we already see that. So we're seeing that in real time. We don't even have to debate that. It would be it would definitely be damaging. I still think that a good judge and defense can kind of balance that. You could, the
Mhm.
jury is going to decide whatever they decide. However, on the civil side of things, I
Mm.
think that it becomes more damaging. And the civil side of things is really where this is going to hurt so much. Some of these, he might wish that he did a little jail time
Now
instead.
now, here's the thing. That's actually a good point. Just for everybody, most of you guys probably even already know this, but I just want to add this in. When it comes to the difference between criminal and civil, for one, with criminal, it is the state or it is the government suing you. And
Mhm.
criminal is you are going to do jail time. Now, the criminal court sometimes order restitution, but that's
Oh,
more,
absolutely.
yeah,
And
that's more
fines.
for people to be made whole again. When
Well,
you come,
sometimes they can order well, restitution is definitely for people to be made whole because that's
yes,
what restitution is. But the court can certainly issue fines
yes.
that will that are actually punitive. So that's why sometimes when you see even on like your most basic of misdemeanor cases, it might say this case carries up to 6 months in jail and or up to $2,500. That $2,500 is a fine. That is an actual that's or up to that's an actual punishment unto itself. So
Now,
people
civil on
do
the
get
other
those.
hand, civil on the other hand, you guys, civil, it only is, there might be some type of injunction prohibiting you to do something.
Certain
There could be
things.
an
Yeah.
order forcing you to do something, or more likely, what we're used to seeing in civil, they hit your pockets, they make your
Oh,
pockets hurt, and they bankrupt you if you're
I
asking
can't
for not
wait till we
carded.
get to that part. The pockets. I mean, everybody needs to just turn those jokers inside out in this
Yes.
case. Just go to your banks and open up the vault and just go, you know what, take what you want. Because that is real. That is how this case is going to look. But I know right
It
now
is.
people are concerned about the
So
civil, so we can come back to that.
okay, so with the criminal case, lay out as an attorney. I think it's
Mhm.
fine. I mean, listen, I'm an armchair psychiatrist, investigation, detective, judge, jury, and executioner. However, let's let our resident actual legal eagle tell us. Why don't you set up a little bit about the case and what you know,
Mhm.
how the faxing, and where the prosecution you see them moving to really kind of twist the knife in? And Travis's liability as opposed to Live Nation's.
Okay, well, I mean, and it looks like Travis and Live Nation now, certainly on the civil side, are going to go hand in hand. But from the criminal side of things, I think Live Nation skates. Live Nation is a corporation. It's not, it's not a person. So let's look at Travis, and if we're going to stretch a little bit, let's look at Travis, the individuals working the front gates, any individuals who were specifically charged with those glasses are cute, who were specifically charged with the safety. And that's once again, you notice it's already getting kind of murky because again, when you talk about criminal liability, you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this person was responsible for committing whatever crime we're saying that they committed. So in the case of Travis, in the case of Travis in this situation, what you would talk about would be, as I was mentioning earlier, probably something along the level of criminally negligent homicide. if we were talking about the deaths in particular. So
Okay.
that's the most spectacular of everything that happened. That's going to be the thing that everybody's going to want, like, ugh.
So I'm
So
confused. Are you saying that that the courts will be looking at Travis to this, or to Live Nation, or to both?
if on a criminal side of things, you got to look at individuals.
Okay.
So, and again, that's if,
Yeah.
because this is really murky criminally. Yes, I don't think that you're going to find a court anywhere who is going to say that he doesn't bear some level of civil liability along with Live Nation. And that's a given. The issue is really going to, as it relates to the criminal, though, you got to get to individuals, and that's where things get hard, because the best way to have an effective criminal case is you have to produce a body, right? And usually, in most situations, we say, "Where's the body?" And we usually say it in Latin, but I'm not going to do it here. We usually say, "Where's the body?" when we're talking about whoever this victim is supposed to be. Like, remember the case? Oh my gosh, why am I having a brain fart? You know, the case with the young woman in Florida who was accused of killing her little girl, and there was
Casey Anthony.
all the foolishness with the
Casey
parents.
Anthony. Yeah, and
Cancer
they could not
Anthony,
secure.
and
Yeah.
for a good portion of the case, initially, they didn't have the little girl's body. So that's one of those things where it's like, where's the body? Same thing with some of these cases where we had those people where the wives disappeared. Now, and so that's why I said usually we're talking about that in terms of the defendant. But in this particular case, I mean, I'm sorry, in terms of the victim, but in this particular case, you almost feel like the question would be, where's the body? Although we never really asked that, as it relates to a potential defendant, someone who is potentially responsible. Because yes, this was a festival that is definitely his. He's one of the
Hmm.
producers, organizers, all of that, and of course all of these other individuals. But was his behavior potentially reckless or negligent? And I'm going to talk about that in a few seconds. Was it potentially reckless or negligent? Yes, but is that still going to be enough for beyond a reasonable doubt? And I think that's the issue. It's not about whether or not a smart prosecutor could craft some charges. It's
Okay.
about whether or not they would be winnable charges, when you know that if you just support providing whatever information you're asked to provide
Okay.
to for the people who are suing, he's gonna get screwed anyway. And this is kind of like what happened in the Cosby case, where the original prosecutor was like, you know what? I think we're going to have a hard time proving this case, but I know you're going to file a civil case. So I'm going to back off. Go forward with your civil case. If there's any help you need from us on the low, I'll give you a little help.
But
And
here's
then
the
you can
thing.
get, and then you'll still get it.
But here's the thing, and I want to talk about when they actually filed the charges. Connor makes a big point. She says that so okay, so a few people made a point. Now I'm gonna just follow me on this for the larger issue, right? Connor makes a good point. Drake was performing, there was Live Nation, Travis Scott was performing also. The Houston Fire Department log shows that the fest was out of control before it
Hmm.
began and most certainly needed to be shut down.
Absolutely.
They also say, I believe the chief of police said they sent out their head that was in charge of crowd control and
Yeah,
explained to
Chief
Travis
Pena.
Scott, yeah, this was the worst crowd control before it even started I've ever seen in 31 years. But yet they went and proceeded. I forget what the term is, but do you remember the sponge case in law school where there's doctors, there's nurses, there's all these people, and a sponge
Hmm.
is sold up in a patient, right? And when
Yes.
that sponge is sold up, they were trying to say whose fault is it? Nurses were like it's the doctor. Doctors like
Yep.
it's the nurses. They
Oh,
tried to even blame the janitor. So what happened? They said the thing where listen, it had to happen. One of you guys are at fault. So you know what? We're treating all of you guys equally, and you guys can fight it out in court to prove who was at greater fault. Do you think that they would actually do that in the criminal cases, rope everybody
No.
in and have everybody, or is there a hierarchy they're going to set?
If there's going to be a criminal case, they will be specific. They're
Okay.
going to be specific. It's when it comes to criminal cases, they
Mhm.
don't leave that up to chance for everybody to do it. If the prosecution brings everybody in, there are specific things that they are trying to prove that each person did, because once if you bring in people on a kind of murky level, then what could happen is everybody gets off, because the best way to create reasonable doubt is to do what? And
True.
then for a jury, nobody gets convicted, because if you are a an ethical juror doing your
Uh,
job, and you go, well, it could have been this one, but it could have been that one. Guess what that is? That's reasonable doubt. So
yes.
it would just be a waste of time and resources, and it's horrible, because we know that how the public feels about this, and how it pulls at people's hearts when this happens. And let's face it, there are some bad actors in here that have absolutely nothing to do with Travis, right? And I don't want to, not that they're going to end up losing anything, because unless there's video,
Yes.
there's really nothing you can do. But because I keep getting asked this question a lot. Well, what about the people who probably were like Joe Schmo, who did stomp on someone's child or girlfriend or
Yeah.
whatever? Do they walk away scot free? Unfortunately, if you're in the middle of a stampede and nobody has a name or video or whatever, then yes, you have a
But isn't
potential
with a stampede,
bad
you can
actor
make the
walking away.
all right, that's a great point, Johnda. But isn't with a stampede, you can make the argument that I was pushed? I mean, if we're in a crowded field and I come and I start like, two-stepping and crip walking on you, okay, fine. But if I have hundreds of people on my back, could you even really establish liability? Because at what
Well, again, from a criminal standpoint, no, and probably from a civil standpoint, no either, because what it's going to come down to is foreseeability in this, and then what your level of recklessness or negligence was in this. And so, which is where it's taking us now. And I'm glad
Mhm.
you brought up the police officer, because this is where we really get to the meat and potatoes of this.
Mm, let's go.
And I know that Rita asked about criminal charges. Honestly, I don't see it. If it happens, I'm just going to be honest, I think it's a waste of time, because there's just too many other factors that actually lend themselves more civilly than criminally. And so I think that if we're going to go down any rabbit hole, it needs to be that one, because we know for sure folks are going down for that. The question is who and what their levels of liability are.
So,
And that's a fun thing to talk about. But go ahead.
okay, and we're going to get into that, but I
Yeah.
want to just say this before you get into the meat and
Oh, of
potatoes,
course.
because that's what everyone's here for. But I have to say, listen, I again, I want you guys in the comments to separate, because this is a legal argument, right? Separate what is morally right from what is legally possible. Yes, Travis Barker behaved horribly. Champagne Poppy
I'm
behaved
so glad
horribly.
you brought that
All
up.
those people,
Huge
but
issue.
yes, but being morally reprehensible is not punishable in the court of law at all times. If I take outside of what Travis Dunn should have done as a great person, when you talk about legal liability, the way that I hear the police chief, the way things were structured, the way tickets were oversold, the way that Live Nation, and if Travis Barker, I know that we're talking about Travis Scott. I keep saying Travis Barker because I'm so psyched about him and Courtney. I'm telling y'all in the comments, you're just gonna have to roll with me for the purposes of this conversation. Travis Scott might be referred to as Travis Barker. So come on, you guys, get with it, right? But here's my whole point. Um, Live Nation, to me, when I looked at this evidence set, did the equivalent of me inviting you guys all to a playhouse to see Tisa Tells YouTube live on Broadway, right? And then I lock the doors, I block all the exits, I only leave one door open at the very front, and I let firecrackers off in the building. And everybody thinks they're about to catch fire. And I even set a fire, and y'all start running toward the exit. I see what you're saying about criminal liability. I do not think it's going to be open and shut on Travis. I don't think it's going to be open and shut on anyone else. But why is Live Nation not getting blamed for being criminally negligent, for creating a situation that a reasonable person under the circumstances, and also trade custom, because that is their trade and there is
Mhm.
customs, all said this is a recipe for disaster and people will most likely be injured severely or even die? Why wouldn't they be held accountable? Or why do you think it would be a waste of time?
I think it's going to be a waste of time because at the end of the day, it's going to be hard to bring, not that it can't be done, but because it has been, but it is extremely hard to bring criminal charges against a company. It is really
Mm,
best when you have criminal charges against individuals. If anybody is currently watching Dope Sick on Hulu, that's an excellent example of bringing of using both criminal and civil liability to bring down a company, because that's what ended up happening with the U.S. Attorney's Office in Purdue Pharma over OxyContin. So check that out.
okay.
But anyway, but Hulu's not paying us, so I'm not going to keep promoting. So, but at any rate, I get it. And see, this whole question of criminal charges is a great question. And this is what makes it so hard. And that's why I'm glad that you brought up earlier the moral liability
Mhm.
versus criminal liability. And more importantly, what you can prove. Because prosecutors are not just in the business of bringing cases just because they can. The
Okay.
goal is to not only bring a case because you feel that this is what the community needs, that because you are essentially seeking justice for the community, but also that you can win. I mean, it really, I know it, that's another thing that may sound reprehensible to
Why don't you think
people.
they could win it though? When I'm talking, here's the thing, you guys. Let's take Travis Scott out of it, right? Because at the
Mhm.
end of the day, Travis Scott could report this Live Nation and say this. If I was Travis Scott, this would be my defense. If they tried to drag me in with Live Nation for criminal, listen, I'm an artist. Let's be real. We, as an artist, we see stuff like this happen all the time. There's ambulances, there's people ODing. This is just concert thing. You guys, welcome to the seedy underworld of outdoor concerts. You didn't know, but now you guys know now. As an artist, I'm on the stage. Yeah, I saw something odd. But because I was busy working and because I was contractually obligated, because my promoter and the people charged with safety did not turn the lights on, they did not send official security. They did not do anything to indicate that while something interesting and maybe even alarming was happening, it wasn't enough to stop the show. And I followed their example and said, okay, this isn't really, it's not a big emergency. Live Nation, if I was Travis, I would say Live Nation dropped the ball. So when you keep saying it would be hard for it to prove, is it because it's civil and they would drag it out and they have the money to, I'm sorry, not civil. Is it because they're a corporation and they have the money to fight back and it's not going to be so easy? And because we're looking at the police department, which probably has some type of state immunity, so it's hard to hold police liable? Or is it just going to be difficult because even with all things being equal, the case isn't as strong as people actually think it is legally?
It's difficult because you still need to pin down liability on specific decision makers. And that's where it gets difficult. And the reason why it keeps coming back to Travis, and this is, we're going to get more into this as we shift towards the civil. But the reason why it gets back to Travis is because, similar to Alec Baldwin in his situation,
Mhm.
Travis was not just a performer. Travis, this is literally his festival in conjunction, yes, this festival belonged to Travis Scott in
Oh,
conjunction with Live Nation doing what they do. So of course, if you're an artist, you're not, and you and your business people are not cray cray. You aren't going to put on your festival by yourself and take on that full expense like some companies did to people in the 90s. Remember, Tony Braxton, TLC, talked about how they
yes.
were bankrupt because when they went on tour, they had to pay for everything. So that's where Live Nation comes in, right? Live Nation's got the infrastructure, the promotion, all of those things. However, in this particular case, Travis was not an employee. He was not just someone who was brought on. Now, Drake has absolutely has that excuse 100%. From my
Okay.
understanding, Drake, SZA, anybody who performed before Travis that day, or, background dancers or whatever the heck is going
Hmm.
on, those individuals, if heaven forbid somebody decided to point the finger at him, because as we know, some of the lawsuits did name Drake, um, they're like, hey, I was invited as an artist. I
Okay.
came, I assumed that everything was all set up like everything you just said, the way that it normally is, that everybody did their job. And hey, I came, I did my thing, the crowd loved it, whatever. The other piece with Travis in terms of liability, both criminal and civil, if let's say in a perfect world you were looking at both of them, Travis is going to be looked at as being actively engaged in the incitement of what occurred because he was on social media earlier that day saying things like, whether you have tickets or not, come down here, blah 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 blah. Now mind you, this
It was
event
just like,
was
oh
sold
Lord.
out in May because apparently, and no shade to Travis Scott, it's just not my personal thing, but no shade. Apparently, he has such a following that it was kind of like Beyonce. Tickets went on sale on Monday, sold out Monday
Hmm.
in May. So why are you even talking this nonsense? Because obviously you know that it was sold out. So now whether we're talking about criminal or civil, just everybody, we're going to learn today, right? It's kind of like Sesame Street grown up style. So right, because you and I like to have a good time and teach
Yes.
folks. Okay, so here's one of the words that you can tell all your friends already you learned today. You're going to learn a bunch of them. One, foreseeability. Foreseeability is huge in this. Even before we get to that point, you're sending out tweets. You got people coming down. Not to mention past history. Now, this, remember, you mentioned earlier, there's things that have happened in the past. He's been
Hmm.
arrested in the past. 2 years ago, the first Astro World, and I keep screwing up the name, Astro World, the very first one, because
Yeah.
they were, trying to make this an annual thing like Coachella or whatever. First one
Hmm.
was in 2019, 2020, of course, we had the Pandorama. So, which by the way, is still going on, but I ain't gonna get into that. Anyway,
Please get back. We
okay,
don't need anti-vax Twitter in the
yeah.
comments. Go on.
Exactly. So anyway, they decided not to have it, understandable. Then, we get back to this year, sold out the tickets in May. In 2019, there was an issue at the front gate. It doesn't appear that it was anything to this level. However, there was a barrier breakage in 2019. Three people that did end up going to the hospital, other undisclosed injuries. No one died. Good. Probably why we didn't hear about it. And then, we have 2019, 2020 gets canceled, and now today. So again, foreseeable. Another reason that this we have foreseeability, and no matter how you slice it on this thing, is the breaking of the barriers at the front gate, which was way bigger than what happened in 2019, occurred at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That went down. Yes, the initial I hate saying stampede because it sounds like you're talking about animals, but whatever. The initial stampede happened at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And so you saw this going bad broad daylight.
Well,
However,
well,
they
just to
felt like they
interrupt.
got it under control.
Well, here's the thing,
Sort
though,
of.
and I'm sorry to interrupt you because this is actually fascinating. But
Mhm.
a lot of people in the comments, and myself included, think, why, if the original Stampede, right, has started moving, because anyone that has any, I did a little Googling, I love to research,
Oh,
right?
of course.
People that have expertise in controlling large venues, whether they are protest, whether they are crowd control at outdoor venues, or any place where there's a large thing, human, at the end of the day, we have a way that we move and a way we operate. When the original barrier was burst and a stampede started, the people that specialize in crowd control from the city, I would think, or even from Live Nation, I'm sure there
Oh, we're going to get into
had
that.
to be
There's
people,
some fun stuff
would
there
have
too.
said, okay, odds of another stampede starting is are like have gone up 99%. Because once for some reason that
Exponentially.
happens, it gets the people going and another thing comes and it breaks out somewhere else. It's almost like
You're
chaos.
already losing control.
Yes, you're losing control. So why at that point did they not call it off? I mean, we know the reason, money, greed, but what legally could they say that they didn't call it off?
And this is where foreseeability keeps getting up and up and
Okay.
up. And then we shift now into another part, some more words to learn. Yay! And we're also setting up a case here, folks. Now that you said it yourself, that we see things happening, right? The stampede is going on, all of that. So, and we don't stop it. We keep the concert going. We think we kind of have it in order because apparently no one's dead, or if they are, we haven't found a body yet. Okay, so that, I mean, let's just call a
Promoters.
spade a spade.
If
Okay,
anybody ever works with promoters in the club or anything, that is a promoter mentality. No shade to
I
promoters,
mean,
but
it is.
yeah. No,
So,
right.
so you have that. So you've got that piece going. You've got the tweets, you've got all that stuff going. Everybody is excited, all of that. And then so now we get into these other two important words that actually gives your a civil attorney two uh different causes of action that they could use. You can use both of them to give the judge some choices: negligence and recklessness.
Mm,
Was it negligent to go on at that point? Well, they can argue at that point, it's still daytime. We still don't even have, we've got a crowd. And yes, there has been a barrier breakage, but I'm sure that it still wasn't what is going to become the prime time crowd, right? Because most people show up for the main act. You maybe have half of the people there, but the main people are going to be there for your 7, 8, 9 o'clock folks. So they probably figured we could get this together. Let's get the barriers back up. We've notified emergency personnel. We're good. Let's just tell them stop tweeting or putting stuff on Instagram, and we can get everybody good. Toss some beach balls out there. Everybody will be okay. You're good. Now, at the point where you have prior to him going on, so there's a second surge, and this is where it truly does get deadly, and we know that.
okay.
The second surge starts after the conclusion of SZA's set. SZA finished at 8, so there was an hour between the end of SZA's set and the beginning of Travis's set at 9. What they typically do at festivals, and we've all seen it if you've ever been to even a smaller concert, they're very deliberate about
Mhm.
having more than one stage with more than one act, maybe halfway back, and there's a method to that. Actually, the methodology is to at least have a portion of your audience paying attention to something else, which of course makes them what less likely to all be running in one direction. I don't know if we could say it was nobody's fault that the ancillary act, I guess, wasn't very interesting, but
Yeah.
whoever it was, bless their hearts. The bottom line is, I don't know what to say. I don't want to put anybody down. I don't know who it was, but apparently they weren't into
But
it.
whoever it
Um,
was, people were not interested in seeing what they
they
had to
weren't
offer.
interested. So sorry. Um, so the
Can you
surge
imagine
happened. A
being
big
like,
surge happened then, and that's when the surge gets deadly. We also have at somewhere at that between that oh, trust me, I see people saying blame this one, that black one. There's enough blame to go around, and trust me,
there is
Lisa and I
y'all.
are going to get into it. Okay. um so we see where Chief Pena, the chief of police,
Hmm.
says he goes back and he talks to Travis. This is not backstage. This is not before he goes and running up the steps. This is when he is still at his trailer. So this is either right before or after SZA performs. He tells him, "Look, bruh, I need you." He specifically mentions the social media thing. Pull up on that. So obviously, in their mind, is having an effect. And also, that's the infamous quote you mentioned. I'm going to try and find it again because I think I did it. I wrote it down or I typed it just like you said it. Um, where he said the thing about, in my 31 years I have
Yes.
never had a situation where I was so concerned about the citizens, so that whole thing.
Yeah.
So we know that that was an absolute concern of the chief of police, and of course we know what happened from there.
Yes.
So that the show still went on. Now I'm gonna stop real quick here because I see a lot of people talking
Yes.
about chief about the police and fire security, so that it doesn't get confusing at the end, if you don't mind.
Yes.
So because we know you guys have a lot of questions. Okay, so these are things, and like in Tisa and I, we go back and forth, we do our research, we're texting each other, what have you. And so this is and I don't just deal with BS sources. She knows that. So these are
Your
things
sources
straight
aren't written
from
in crayon.
CNN, NPR, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, what have you. So unless they lying, we ain't lying. So anyway, that's not what we do. So at any rate, according to the sources and Chief Pena and the fire chief, because as we know and expect, everybody is doing what? Everybody's shaggy right now, right? Wasn't me.
Hmm.
Now, according to the chief of police and fires department, the concert, Live Nation slash Travis Scott Astroworld, said they were having private security, which you can, because you got to submit a security plan anyway, that they were having private security. So even so, at that point, as far as the fire department is concerned and the fire chief, they are going to handle this by being in the periphery. They are familiar with that venue. Obviously, it's been there for years. They've had other festivals there. So they know that. Now I'm speaking as far as what the fire chief said. So they know where people need to be staged as far as fire and rescue, where the entrances and exits need to be, and how many of them they need to have. It's no different than anything else. And from, I gather most of us in here are adults. We've all been places where you can't block certain things. You can't put too many chairs here or there because why? Because it's going to be against the fire code. People need to get in and out. Okay,
Yeah.
so according to the fire chief, that is the approach they took. We have to be here because we are Houston PD, but we are here in the most broadest sense unless we're needed. And for the most part, the same with the police. It wasn't like some of the events here where I'm at in Virginia, where they'll just hire a crap load of off-duty police officers to handle a lot of this stuff. It may cost more, but at least you know that you've got experienced people.
Okay.
Now that doesn't mean, as far as I'm concerned, that that HPD and HFD are off the hook. Because as far as I'm concerned, and we have, again, being adults, we have all seen it, fire chiefs rather, will close or force a Walmart to shut its doors on Black Friday if they think there's too many people in there and mamas might get unruly over Tickle Me Elmo. So
Okay.
at a point where you have a chief of police saying in his 31 years of experience he has never been so concerned about citizen safety, and you have fire and rescue aware of the event because at the very least they're on the periphery, and they don't exercise the ultimate authority through the city and somehow at least attempt to shut this down. Even if they couldn't, you at least want to be on record that you tried. I have a problem with that. And anybody going into court should have a problem with that. And so the city of Houston needs to be one of the umpteen people on that list of folks
Yes.
being sued.
And let's actually talk about that because, again, I know everybody, and again, you guys, I said it earlier. If you're just joining us, welcome. We have attorney, criminal law extraordinaire, Just Johnda. We are not giving legal advice, but she is a criminal law attorney, and me as a
And I do
busybody.
civil as well. Mhm.
Well, and civil law attorney, and me as a civilian busybody are giving our 2 cents.
Everybody's a busybody in this. I'm not on this
Yes.
case. I'm a
Welcome,
busybody.
welcome, welcome to the busybody things. I even got my busybody glasses. But Sonia M, actually, thank you for the super chat and thank you for your service. Veterans Day is every day over in this channel, right? You say that Troy Finner replaced Pina not that long ago. Can that play anything in astounding liability, basically saying I can't see a police chief saying that, but saying like, listen, I just started. Like I just started. I should have known. I didn't. I hadn't even got through the training. I'm still in my 90 days. Like, I'm sorry, you know?
Yeah, but Pena was there. He
Okay.
went. Okay, so Pena's a former chief of police. The bottom line is Pena is the one who made this statement.
Okay.
So
Perfect. So how about this then? So we have, because everybody keeps talking about Travis Scott. And here's the thing, you guys, two things can be true.
mhm.
Travis Scott can be liable, culpable civilly and
Yes.
morally, right? And also, he could be getting the book thrown at him because he doesn't look like Justin Bieber. Two things can be true.
Boom.
You know, privilege isn't when things are going good. Everybody got privilege when things are going good. Privilege is when things start to hit the fan, how quick people are quick to throw the book at you or whether they'll give you grace to kind of explain a little bit more. So I just want to put that in the chat because you guys, I do believe that Travis Scott is being treated harsher. However, he does have liability in the situation too. It's
Oh,
unfortunate.
absolutely.
But like our Esquire, lovely Esquire just pointed out, I mean, listen, if we're gonna play this game, then the police need to be dragged in civilly. But I do know that in most states, and also federally, there is immunity.
Yes.
And there's a high standard of burden to be raised before you can dissolve that immunity. Does this, in your opinion, rise to that level, or would it be a fight to even get a crack at, piercing the immunity veil?
I think it's always a fight, but I don't think that this is an impossible fight at all because
Oh.
these are exceptional circumstances and you had individuals there who have the experience and the understanding and saw it firsthand,
Mm.
but allowed it to go on. Not to mention the fact that, remember some of those fancy words we were talking about as foreseeability, because things started to go
Mhm.
downhill hours and hours before. And then of course, once we get to a point later on where there are once we get to a point later on where there are actual things going on.
I
But
just have one more question to
mhm,
interject before we change subject.
yeah.
Do you think that the new police chief, because it's funny, Sonia said this new guy, that the police chief is new, right? Do you
Mhm.
think because it was such a shock and tragedy, their statements immediately prior, I mean, not prior, but immediately after the horrible events, kind of might be the thing that's going to help pierce that veil of immunity that the police usually have when it comes to civil suits? Because they said, we went to Travis and told him never in our 31 years have we seen anything so bad.
Absolutely.
And they thought that was distancing. And any lawyer was like, you literally just implicated yourself because you should have never let the show go on. So go
Yeah,
on.
or at least shut your mouth about the fact that you assessed and understood the seriousness of the situation and didn't do anything about it. So you know what? Yeah, you're
Yes,
an idiot. And unless somebody asks you if you said something that
right,
inflammatory, you don't volunteer that information because where you think you're getting yourself out of you talk about jumping out the frying pan right into the fire.
right.
Like it's one of those, how when you grab a friend and be like, you have a girlfriend who wants to jump into an argument and you grab her and go,
Wait, hold
girl,
on.
you're not helping.
Perfect analogy. Last season 13 of Real Housewives of Atlanta, when Tanya Sam and they were trying to find out who was in the room with Bolo and Portia, and Tanya Sam said, all I know is that this woman right here was in the room with me the whole night. And Portia was just like, damn. You
You
just, and
are
Kenya was
not
like,
helping.
was she?
Exactly.
And Tanya just placed them both at the scene. And it was just like, well, we know who was in the room with Bolo. Thank you,
Hello.
Tanya. Thank you. Yeah.
And that's why she ain't coming back. She had to go and save that long suffering 50-year engagement. So,
Listen, she said, y'all ain't messing up things between me and Paul. We're cool. We're cool. We're cool. We're cool. But
so,
okay.
but no, same thing. Like, don't help.
Don't help.
So, don't help. So, and we're getting a lot of questions about it that are saying, well, Travis was doing this, Travis is doing that. Maybe it maybe part of this will help. Let's deal with where we know
I have
we
to
know
ask you
this is
this.
going.
But Johnda, I have to ask you this. I see a
Uh-huh.
lot of people, and take this question seriously, right?
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
see a lot of people saying there was dark energy there. I think anytime the crowd, I've been in crowds where I've never been in a stampede, but I've been in crowds where control is starting to be lost and it starts breaking out like fires all over
Yes.
the place. It's actually really scary. People said that it seemed like they are into satanic, devil worshiping things. Now, part of it is the smirk, but I've always been had a question legally. Could
Mhm.
you actually go to court and be like, this
The
person,
devil
I'm
made
not,
me do
is the known Satanist? They do this, they do that. Or would they be laughed out of court? Is that something more in the court of public opinion? I'm not saying they are. You guys don't go quoting me.
it. Mhm.
But if someone was to bring that argument, would that even matter in the court of law?
No. And I mean, and let's face it, there have been cases over the years where people have said the devil made me do it. And you know what those are? Those are insanity defense cases. And by the way,
Well, not
not an easy
devil.
standard to meet
No,
at
no, not
all.
not insanity cases, but if the prosecution tries to say they are known devil worshippers, they're known this, they're known that, would that actually be any? I've just always wondered.
No, because unless you are trying to actually go down that long, freaky, internet road of sacrifices and all of that stuff, there would be no reason for that to come up
Okay,
because the only reason to bring that up would be to say, because other than that you would really be infringing upon freedom of religion, right? So the
I
only
was thinking
reason to
that.
bring that up would be to say, because of this, they did that, kind of like the case that came up with the woman from the documentary The Way Down, where
Okay.
the little boy was beat to, you know. And so what ended up happening is a lot of the church practices obviously came into play, because sparing the rod was a major part of their teachings. So it would
Mm,
have to there would need to be some causal link. So where now with Travis Scott, I know that a lot of people are like, well, he was a performer. He didn't have anything to do with this. He tried to stop the show. He did this and that. The best way to kind of wrap that piece up so that we can move on to the next part, and maybe you all stop debating about that, is Travis Scott was not just a performer. This was his event, organizer, producer. Let's just call him owner. This was his event. The best analogy for this, and is a very current one, by the way, so I hope you like it, for this that's current, is the Alec Baldwin case. Alec Baldwin accidentally shot and killed the director of photography on his movie. There is no question in the world, unlike the wacky stuff in this one, but at least in that case, no question in the world, it was absolutely an accident. There's all kinds of shenanigans about, inexperienced people and, all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, however much we may feel bad for the fact that we can't imagine how horrible Alec Baldwin must feel, right? It was his production company.
mhm.
Therefore, when liability comes down, at least the civil liability, because we know he's not going to be charged criminally, there's no question it was an accident. But from a civil liability standpoint, ultimately, it being his production company, his production, he is going to bear liability, however bad he may feel from a sympathetic standpoint, as in you shooting a person. So
Mhm.
that is it. So if we were to take Travis Scott and put him where I just put Alec Baldwin, that is why we like Travis Scott does not get away from liability in this. It doesn't matter whether he was performing or not. It
Oh,
doesn't
wow.
even matter whether this happened during SZA's set as opposed to his. He still would bear liability because it was his festival. Live Nation, the insurance companies, all of them, of course, are all a part of the many people that are going to be on the page when someone gets sued. So, when there's a lawsuit, you look at your, as we call it, your caption of the case, it says so and so, let's say it's me and Tisa, we were there, you know, just Johnda and Tisa
Mm.
versus it's going to be like 2 pages long.
Yes.
All the people that are going to be sued. Now, as the case shakes itself out, there are going to be individuals, like for instance Drake, whose attorney will easily be like, he was hired for the event, he's nobody in all of this, thank you but good night.
Yeah.
um there will be people who are able to pull themselves out. One of the first group of people who are going to pull themselves out are the insurance companies, because the insurance companies are going to say, we insured you according to the plans that you provided to us, particularly your safety plan, your facilities plan, all of that. And based on what we saw, basic protocols as it related to security and safety and all of those things were not followed. And why should we as an insurance company pay millions and millions and millions of
Mm.
dollars on your behalf when you and your people on site were negligent? So trust and believe.
So, but here's the thing with insurance. I've always wondered with this insurance claims to, and maybe they can get away scot free. I buy a ticket because I believe that the concert is insured. They show a ticket, right? The ticket says in there in that whole little disclaimer, we have insurance, right? Now,
Yeah, you
nobody
have
ever
to have
reads
event
it.
insurance anyway.
Well,
Mhm.
here's the thing though. If you tend to read it, your concert tickets do say, oh, blah, blah. If you go to the thing, they'll tell you who the insured is insured, this and that. Most people don't care, but if you need that insurance, it's like, Mom, I'm going to a place that has insurance. If they go and a stampede happens and the insurance company can just say, well, guess what? You didn't sign it right. You violated this. We're not paying. But does the insurance company have any liability that after Travis's pockets are emptied and whoever else's, can I actually go back to the insurance company and be like, listen, we tried Travis, he's broke. I'm number 3068. Travis is broke. Live Nations is broke. You told me that there was insurance here, insurance policy. I need you to pay whatever my medical expenses are. Could you, as a consumer, make that argument to the insurance policy? Or is the insurance policy just like, nope, it's not a good one, forget about it? Because it was a warranty that they made to
Yes,
people
but
that can't.
the contract for insurance the contract. Thank you for make it make sense. They said the contract was insured for 26 million. Insurance is a contract between the person who took out the insurance and between the insurance company and the insured. The insured, because there were several policies that would be on this. There would be a policy that the venue has, there would be a policy that for that event itself, because I've purchased it, event insurance just for that event, as well as various other policies Travis may have as an
Okay.
performer, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the bottom and what he just mentioned, the concert being insured for 26 million, that would be the event insurance. Now, what happens with that is even with the event insurance, that policy is no different from any other contract. It is a contract between Travis and Live Nation, whomever took the policy out, and I don't know, let's say Joe Schmo Insurance Company. Now, if Joe Schmo Insurance Company says, based on our investigation of this situation, we're not going to cover you. You did not, you didn't, you breached your contract, so we're not going to cover you. Kind of like taking out an insurance policy on Monday and offing yourself on Tuesday. We're not paying your family. So, because remember, they
Yeah,
don't pay.
exactly.
And so this is the same thing. So the insurance company would of course then say we're going to not pay. Now, of course, Travis Scott's and Live Nation would be insane if they didn't, fight their insurance company on that issue because they need the
Okay.
money.
Okay.
But at least initially, that is going to be the insurance company's issue, and the insurance company is certainly going to have their lawyers run to the courthouse and say, here's the clause in our contract that shows, and we have given them notice that we are not involved in this. Our contract is null and void. Therefore, we need to be removed from this case. And unless the judge finds some issue with that, some kind of fraudulent stuff on that end, then they may be successful in that, in which case, to your question, someone trying to get X amount of money. Somebody said legal at the insurance company is working overtime. Hell yeah. So, um, so at any rate, the person who, I'm sorry, lost my train of thought reading that because it was such a good comment. But, but at any rate, to your point, that would preclude you, for instance, because remember, me and you were suing, that would preclude you and I from saying, well, we didn't get our full settlement from Travis and Live Nation, so the insurance company should make up the difference. Not if the insurance company is relieved of liability. And another thing that will help the insurance company is if, as the case is going on, because this is going to go on for years.
Do you think this is
If
going to be a long case? That was a
that,
question a
well,
lot of
civil
people were
cases
asking.
are anyway. I mean, unless they start writing settlement checks right away. Now, let's be clear, okay? Or as I say in my podcast, let's be honest, okay? Let's be clear. The main it's as it relates to the wrongful death situations, the individuals who have actually passed away, they're going to try as they might, and understandably so, to settle with those individuals right away. So that's really going to just be a matter of whether or not both sides come to something that
Do they
they
do
can
they
live
have
with.
no, true, Johnda, but do you think they have enough money to do that? Because here's the thing, it's not just like one person was fatally injured or one person's brain dead. Right now, we know of 2 people, unfortunately,
Hmm.
that looks like they might, even though they may have transitioned, their bodies are still being kept alive by machines. There's other people that have severe
Yeah, we
internal
talked about that
bruising.
earlier. Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if they have enough money to settle with everyone that right now is actually seriously injured. Forget about the frivolous lawsuits, right? Like,
Yeah,
oh, my ankle
and
got scratched or
there'll be a ton of them, and quite frankly,
yes.
they're going to have to deal with those too, because if nothing else, however frivolous, sometimes is like they say, it's cheaper to keep her. Sometimes it's cheaper to pay.
Okay.
Um,
One
I
other
agree with you
question.
as
Go
far as
on.
enough money to answer your first question, because I don't want
Okay.
to forget that one, because that's a great question. Um, as it relates to your first question, it's going to be tough, and
Mm,
that's where we will find out. And I think when if and when, because it's only a matter of time, one way or the other, that we see some of the people that are on the wrongful death side of this thing, and of course other things they're going to argue, but I'm just using that cause of
mhm.
action as an example. If let's say, let's stick with 9, thanks for the reminder, Money Miller. Okay, so if we see some of the 9 that we know of now going in a trial direction as opposed to a settlement direction, then you're absolutely right. Chances are, because of the amount of money that the entities on the Travis Scott Live Nation side have, because of the amount of money that they were like, look, this is the cap of what we're going to be able to do, because we know that we've got to make offers to other people, then we're going to know that the numbers they offered weren't good enough, because they know, like you said, you can't give away the farm to the first couple of people that show up, because you still have a whole lot of cows that you got to milk for
Yes.
everybody else.
Definitely. The second question a lot of people have been asking, I just want you to address this so then we can get into this meat and potatoes that I know you are ready to
Yeah,
take
the
us on.
civil side, I'm so excited.
Yes. Can they forbid Travis Scott from ever performing again? Now, from what I understand, um, no, but in a weird way, yes, because this could make him uninsurable. And if you can't
Yes.
get insurance for a giant concert, you literally cannot perform in concert venues again.
Um, well, there's the short answer is no.
Oh.
Chances are, no. Can they forbid him to perform again? This is not like some of my more clients with, let's say, things with children that are not appropriate, where they can be banned from the internet and things like that, because
Mm,
that it really allows them and facilitates them committing their crimes.
yeah.
Whereas, as with Travis, you would be impeding his ability to take care of himself, to work, etc. So what would typically happen is exactly what you're saying. It would be a matter of whether or not people want him around. And as we know, everybody talks about, I hate even to use the word because I think it's a stupid word, but everybody talks about canceling and all this kind of stuff. We know that that is all relative. Nobody truly goes away unless the public wants them to go away. Travis has a strong, devoted, and apparently incredibly huge worldwide fan base. He is not going to go away. And as long as he can make money for other people, because the
Mhm.
money he makes isn't just for himself. Like, for instance, this made Live Nation money too. As long as he is a viable artist, and he is, because he still has a strong fan base,
He does.
then there will be opportunities for him to do what he does. Will he be able, I agree with you, will he be able to book large venues for, Astroworld Part 3 and be able to insure it and all of that kind of stuff? Even if he did, he would have to provide any insurance company with a brain and venue with a hell of a lot of safeguards, probably
Mm,
even doing it at a venue where there is seating, so to discourage the
yes,
whole moshing atmosphere, etc.
yes, yes,
So I
yes.
think that that is more what will happen, because there are promoters, even if not individual artists, who have dealt with tragic situations and have gone on to fight another day, so to speak. There's just going to have to be either him playing smaller venues, or he will, or I don't know what that was, him playing smaller venues, or him just making a lot of concessions to the individuals who invite him to perform. Now, will that change his music, his stage persona, and all of that? No, it just means that if there's, especially if he's a headliner, there'll probably be things in his contract about the way that he promotes his shows, or
Yeah.
the things that he encourages his fans to do,
Mm,
that kind of thing. So, but is it going to hurt him for a while? Yes.
yes.
It's
And that's the
definitely going to hurt
thing.
him for a while.
When people complain about getting canceled, all they're complaining about is you are using your economic power to stop me from making a bag. That's what they're
Yeah,
complaining
for
about
the
when they're saying
moment.
for the moment, because no one, I was actually having a debate with this with some friends prior to this. I can't think of one person that's been canceled that stayed permanently canceled. I
Nope.
really can't. Not one person. And these are people that, in my opinion,
Even OJ's Twitter
deserve it.
feed is funny.
Just Johnda. We
I'm just saying. I don't follow it,
we
but
got the
I've seen
Travis
some tweets.
people going to war in the comments. Let's move on from OJ. Okay, so listen, you're about to start a riot. Listen, did you not learn anything from Asteroid World? You
Okay,
are
for those of
literally,
you who don't know me, I like to say stuff just to
and I
make
love
you
her
all
for it.
crazy.
Don't you apologize. That's why you're on the show. But you about to start a, what is it to quote the Candace Diller? You about to start a commotion in here. So
Exactly.
Lloyd, yeah, Candace Diller
What is
bastard,
it
but
with
she's like,
moderation?
yes, I'm about to cause a scene in here. You about to cause a scene, right? You're like, OJ. And I'm like, there with the
Yeah,
feed. But
somebody said he's
listen,
already being canceled from festival events. Again,
well,
not
he is, but
necessarily.
that's because
It just, you guys have to remember, it just happened
they'd be
last week.
stupid to have
Of
him on.
course, you
Yes.
have to cancel that person coming. And I don't mean canceled, I mean actually canceled as in the definition of the word in the dictionary.
You
Of
know what it
course, you
is?
need to cancel their
You
next four
guys,
appearances.
it would be equivalent to a school bus driver getting in an accident, children being hurt, unfortunately, the school driver under suspicion of drunk driving, and the next morning the school bus pull up and it's the driver there. You like,
Exactly.
listen, I don't know if you're guilty or innocent, but you won't have to take a leave of absence until the investigation clears. Like, get out
Exactly.
of here. You know,
I know that people said Chrisette Michelle, again, different situation, because
different, no?
Chrisette Michelle has a niche. When you have a niche fan base, Chrisette Michelle was black famous, not everybody else famous. I know you hate hearing it, but it is what it is. And so am I telling the truth? So the bottom
Let's move
line
on.
so the bottom line is, if your core fan base, which is this big, decide they don't want to mess with you anymore, then yes, you are probably going to stay quote unquote canceled longer. Where if you are somebody like Beyonce, and a segment uh of your fan base decides that they want to cancel you, she has such a huge fan base that it's like, oh, y'all little $5.
Yes.
Okay, I'm good. You know,
Beyonce can afford to kick half her audience out and be like, "Get out of here, brokies. Go
okay,
home."
and still go to the Louvre. Shoot me.
Exactly. So listen. let's get into this, the
What,
meat and
liability?
potatoes. Let's get into the meat and potatoes. Let's go.
Okay, who is liable? Now, we learned some of these words earlier. This is where the as they say, the chickens come home to roost, because when you start talking about foreseeability and negligence, and then ultimately who may be responsible and liable for these types of things, then you take everybody who would have been responsible for putting on the event, ensuring the safety of the occupants, all of those people. And that's when you start looking at who's going to have, who potentially, obviously, everything is potential.
Okay.
Okay. Who potentially will have to write checks. Okay. So, one, we know common sense, Travis Scott and Live Nation. We already talked about why it was literally his event, co-owned, produced, put on, whatever you want to call it, by Live Nation. So right here at, oh, you guys can't see it, right here at the top. Okay.
Yeah.
Then you also, as you correctly pointed out, in if I were suing, I would also add the city of Houston by virtue of Houston PD and Houston Fire Department. Of course, as you correctly pointed out, there is a whole very difficult, extremely difficult piece of litigation that goes along with that too, as you mentioned, to pierce their immunity. So remember, you brought that up earlier, and that
Yes.
was your assertion of that was absolutely correct. That wouldn't stop me from doing it, right? I mean, we're talking about kids dying. I mean, I'm going after
Exactly.
everybody, right?
Yeah.
So uh after that, we have private security. Now, this is another place it gets very messy.
Mm.
Allegedly, well, not allegedly, again, Houston PD, they said it. Houston PD and Houston Fire. And this one was actually, I got this from the statement of the fire department. He gave this statement to CNN, I believe on Monday. He said that um that traffic, because of course they got a million questions. Why weren't there more officers there? Why weren't this? Well, first of all, they would have had to have the whole Houston PD and Houston Fire there, right? I mean,
Mhm.
50,000 people. But more importantly, and this just bounces even more on Travis and Live Nation's plate, they allegedly hired a private security firm to do this. Now, taking a little detour at the private security, a gentleman just did an interview with the media the other day. Actually, it was yesterday. And you can find this on YouTube. So anybody could, just do a search on security guard from, in fact, it was easy to find. It said security guard from Astroworld said no training. The security guard alleges that this so called private security literally hired them like via text. They had no training. They showed up that day, of course, wearing black or whatever, because that makes sense. You're not going to have a bunch of uniforms for everybody. They showed up that day, they stood in line, signed in, and were given their credentials, so to speak. So but really little to no training. They got there that day. I mean, how much training could you get? First of all, people are already showing up first thing in the morning. That's why they were so rowdy. By 2 o'clock, they broke the barricades. So that is, I don't know if that was all of their private security, but if there is any truth to the fact that that was even a portion of their private security, that is definitely another problem. Yes,
Question.
ma'am.
Could the defense to that be that that was industry custom? That was the
Um,
industry standard, that when we go, listen, when if they go on the stage and they're like, listen, I know you think we're hiring ex Israeli secret services and ex M6 and CIA, but we are hiring people that work on the weekends at the local library. Like, what do you want for the concert ticket? Is it the industry standard if they can prove to hire untrained people as security? Um, would they still be liable, or would this just still liable? But then they could make an argument that then the whole industry has to be liable. I don't even know if that's an
No.
argument, but
Mm-mm.
okay.
No, even if it is industry standard, like everything, something can be industry standard, but if it f's up on your watch, you're still screwed. So,
Fair enough. Now,
I
Rim,
mean,
thank you so much for the super chat. Rim says, Tisa and Johnda, what do you think about the difference in treatment the media is giving to Alec Baldwin versus Travis Scott? I mean, honestly, I talked about this earlier, and you guys, I stand decided. Two things can be true at the same time. Travis Scott, if he, well, not even if, he is part of the promotion, it was half his concert in conjunction 100% he's liable. I do believe the media is heaping on, but again, like I said, privilege is never when everything's going right. Beyonce is always treated the same as Jeff Bezos in the room, as two billionaires in the room.
mhm.
However, when things start to hit the fan, is when you start seeing the way the media starts talking about Beyonce and the way the media starts treating Jeff Bezos. So that's why I think they're being treated. I know it's different situations, but it's also the way that Alec Baldwin is assumed to come from a different place. Whenever I look at any articles online about the Alec Baldwin, it has him tear filled, looking
Yeah.
remorseful, looking into the sky. And
And
whenever I
in
have see,
fairness, it was a different incident,
no, but hold on. But whenever I see pictures of Travis Scott, he's looking high with his dreads all over the place in a hat, like looking
which
like
is
he's
the
just like a
image
mess.
he put out. Even his apology was in black and white with him doing this the whole time. Man,
Listen, he's trying to
man,
act
man.
sad. He doesn't have empathy. But my whole thing with Alec Baldwin, I will stand behind this. Just because people weren't crushed, there is somebody, two people, one person lost their lives, another person, I don't even know if he's at the hospital yet. People are injured. The set was a mess. There have been accidents before then. The
Uh-huh.
Alec Baldwin knew that shit was going bad. There have been two prior accidents on two separate occasions that led up to this. I know it's a different thing. I know it's different circumstances,
Yeah.
but we still have to think, why is Alec Baldwin being painted as someone that's so hurt from the tragedy because he looked crazy into the phone? I believe he was going losing his mind. You thought you were going to jail. Catch me after I accidentally shot someone. You would see the tears streaming down. Doesn't mean you care any more or less. If anything, why don't we show Alec Baldwin in the pictures where he's on the street of New York fighting paparazzi, snarling and
Because
cursing
that
people
had
out?
nothing to, because that was not immediately following the incident. I'm going to say something, and I know it's not going to be very popular, but as someone who literally follows 200 different media sources a day, and they aren't all of one kind, I have to tell you that sometimes when it comes to certain stories, we assume that because we are only following, and I'm saying we right now, especially in terms of people that look like me, that we assume that because it is not on the Shade Room, that it is not on Bossip, that it's not on TMZ or whatever, that stories are not being covered because they're not being covered in places where we typically go. And when it comes to the Alec Baldwin case, part of the reason why we know as much as we know about that case is that every news source, but they were in mainstream news sources, which a lot of us of a certain age don't go to, covered that case ad nauseum. And then it got to a certain point where this case, quite frankly, is going to get and we also have to remember we're in the first few days where it's
Okay.
going to get where it stalls out. And that is part of where the Alec Baldwin case is because we know that there were issues with the producer. We know there were issues with the production. We know that people walked out and all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's hit the point of with the prosecution. and of course with probably various attorneys, where they are at the sink or swim point where the sheriff is like, okay, now we're going to go to the back room and sit down and figure out, are we going to bring any charges against anybody while y'all start writing checks and what have you. So I think that that's part of where it is. Tanya Williams, Alec is not going to jail on that.
Okay, I
Sorry to
will
bother
say
you.
this.
But
I will say this. A lot of you guys people are saying that Travis kept rubbing his head and face. He wouldn't make eye contact with the camera. He was hiding his real feelings, no remorse whatsoever. If I was a defense attorney, I would say my client suffers from Asperger's. It's impossible for him to make eye contact. He's a musical genius. He's a little bit socially
or just
awkward. It is
call
what
it
it
what
is.
it is. My
Yeah,
client
yeah.
was high, therefore he's not going to be able to make eye
I don't
contact,
even think
and
he was
he hasn't.
high.
Well,
I
no,
think,
but I'm saying being
yeah,
high is a defense too. My
this is
client
true.
was high,
But
therefore
not
he has not fully absorbed and understood the gravity of this situation. And now that he does, he is in seclusion. That's
But is
actually great.
being high a defense if you intoxicated yourself?
Well, you're not charged with doing
Oh,
anything
true.
wrong. When
True,
you
true,
saw
true.
my client, and again, high could be on alcohol. You
True.
could
True,
simply
true, true.
say, my client, he had had a big night. He was still
True.
intoxicated. He was encouraged to make a statement because he didn't want his fans to think that he didn't care. So he made a statement when he really wasn't ready to, because he still didn't fully understand the largesse of everything that's going on. And now at this point, don't you love how I'm spinning this for you? And
I love it. I
and
love
now
it.
at this point, he is in seclusion. He is dealing with it. His heart is broken. All of that. So,
Listen, the
do
black
I
and white.
necessarily have to believe it? No, but as an attorney, I'd argue it all day.
Okay, but I just want to also say to you guys, and thank you, Esquire Counselor. Thank you for your impassioned plea. I will say, Tanya Williams says, "Come on, there was a black and white filter on his apology." You guys, I do think there's an age gap difference in this too.
Mhm,
Travis Scott was speaking
absolutely.
which are the ages of what, 9 to 30. I mean,
Apparently
his
so.
hardcore
Like
base.
9 to 40.
Well, his hardcore base though is
But
nine
no,
to
like nine
thirty.
to 30. He's
Yeah.
got the money demographic that even
All right.
TV look for, 18 to 33. He's got which is great
Okay.
because those fans have money to come to concerts.
Okay, but in that money demographic, you guys,
But they're
a black
young.
and white apology, people assume you're being more serious. He
Yes.
thought he was being more serious to put on a filter, to put on something that might look it's too like chipper. So what did he did? He did a black and white a black and white thing to be like, yo, I'm being raw. I think that it was a high stakes thing. The PR people came in. They
Yeah,
said,
you
"Oh
never
well,
know who's advising him, and everybody's advice ain't great.
exactly." But that's a cult. That's not even culture. It's a kid thing. The black and white apology means so. If anybody ever gets caught doing something messed up, make sure if you send a video thing, make sure you do it in black and white so they know. Put some rain in there too. Now, let me ask you a question. Before we go, I just want to interject this, you guys. Thank you so much for joining. This is with Just Johnda, our legal eagle. We're also going to be breaking down some Mary Crosby stuff either later on this weekend or next week. And we're going to revisit Jen Shaw based on what we've seen on The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. Now, before she continues in the chat, I just want you guys to know, if you're new to this chat, I'm Tisa. If you're not, hey, what's going on, right? I just want you guys to know that at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I am doing my gossip mess. That is
I
when,
can't
listen,
wait.
right now
I'll be
we're
in
in
the
the
car, but
courtroom.
I'm gonna be
Yes,
I'm gonna have it
Johnda
on.
knows. We do it all. Right now, we are being legal eagle. You see, I got my glasses on, but in 30 minutes, I'm taking them off. I'm letting my hair out. We getting in the gutter. All right. We're gonna talk about all things gossip, all things blind items,
Feet
and
up on the desk, all of
yes.
that.
And it is going to be so good. So if you guys want to join, it is members only. It's $4.99 to join. Thanksgiving is coming up. You don't need any damn cake pops and venti large frappuccinos from Starbucks. Put the money into my membership. At least I give you something that'll keep you entertained while you are cooking Thanksgiving dinner. Now listen, you guys, let's get back into this because Johnda's been with us for so long. Let's let her get into her meat and potatoes. We'll get through it. And then if she has time, we'll answer a few questions. But if not, I
And
guarantee
we
you
know
Johnda
this
is going to
isn't
be
going anywhere anytime soon,
exactly.
as
Johnda
far as
will
this
be
case.
back.
I'm going to talk about on the podcast. Tisa's going to come over there. You know, this
We're
this
gonna
is
do
how
it.
we do.
And also, you guys, we're also going to get into Mary Crosby. We're going to get back into Jen, and we're also
Mhm.
going to go into Ahmad. In that case, I found it very odd that we don't know the killer's names. We keep referring it to it as Ahmad's
Yeah,
case,
and
and we
he's
don't
not the
know
one who did anything. Hello, he's the
exactly.
victim.
I
And
find
girl,
that
you know,
odd.
don't even get me fired up by that. Yesterday, when the defense attorney said, "No more, we don't need no more black pastors in the courtroom." I can't.
He actually said that they made a motion to get Al Sharpton removed from the courtroom that was sitting there quietly. I know Al Sharpton was like, "No, what this got to do with me?" And he said, "Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion to get him removed from the courtroom because we don't need any more black pastors in this courtroom." So, yeah,
Yeah, it's off the
it is
chain.
what it is. Black
But
pastors,
in fairness, just a quickie, compared to the Rittenhouse case, the judge in this case, the defense attorneys are off the chain, but the judge has actually been really good, like mwah, absolute professional, holding
nice.
people to task. Now the Rittenhouse, we ain't even gonna talk about that. That case, that whole
Well,
thing just
no,
needs
we're
to
going
be
to talk
thrown out.
about that on a different
No, I'm
episode, or
saying
maybe
like
on
right
a
now because
podcast.
both of our blood pressures will shoot up because that judge is just.
Listen, the judge got him. Listen, we'll get into
Well,
that.
yeah,
But
because
one
I'm
thing,
telling you, we already getting mad just thinking about it.
right? So
But
people,
okay, so
rise
back
up.
to this.
Let me stop
Okay,
before you're
I'm
trying to
just
Travis
about to
Scott
ask
me.
about this, Brittany.
Yes. Listen, the Rittenhouse judge is off the rails, but let's shut up before they accuse us of trying to do a Travis Scott and inciting people to rise up
Well,
against that judge,
exactly.
right?
Oh my gosh! Yay, free Brittany. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Anywho, so even my 14-year-old is gonna do a happy dance about that. So
Even a thing. Happy that. So you guys, let's get into. I think we have Johnda
okay,
for maybe about 10 more
yes,
minutes,
because I
maybe.
did
If
have
not,
to get
Johnda,
ready to
let
roll
us
out.
know when you gotta leave. It's fine. And then
Mhm.
I'll say goodbye to all our friends. But really quick, with the meat and potatoes, where do you see this actually going? Because at this point, there's liability to go around.
Absolutely.
Everybody's guilty. Criminal, you think is gonna be a high bar,
Director of
but right
risk and
now,
safety, the festival director, the venue, the director of security. Now, of course, depending on who hired whom, that that will impact the person's actual, like, do I need to write a check liability? Of course, because if you were truly an employee as opposed to an independent contractor that didn't do your job, your liability is different. If you are director of security, or even festival director, but under the umbrella of Live Nation, because remember, Live Nation, well, I know you know, is a multinational, it's an international corporation. I mean, it's a mega conglomerate. So they may have, and I'm sure they do, it's just a matter of whether or not they choose to use them for, because even conglomerates don't always use all of their own people
yeah,
for every single event.
yeah,
Sometimes they'll go with local people, for various reasons. There's many reasons, not necessary to go into it, but the bottom line is, even with that, if Live Nation and Travis Scott contracted these out to independent contractors, yes, we already know that Live Nation and Travis, let's always keep them on the shelf, as in we already know that they're going to have some liability, so we don't have to keep saying that over and over.
okay,
But it, like, for instance, when we get into security companies, the festival director, those types of things, then the question is, were those in-house people, or were they independent contractors that were hired, or for the event, like vendors? If so, then there may be liability that they have. Now, of course, because they were hired
mm-hmm.
by Live Nation and Travis, they're going to go back and forth. Another word that we're all going to learn as we go through watching this is indemnify or indemnity, because when this often happens with insurance companies, for sure, For instance, if I am in a car accident, the accident is not my fault, but I need my car fixed, I need
Mhm.
my hospital bills paid, etc. My own I can go to my own insurance company and they will pay that because that's what I pay them for. However, they are going to then go after the other insurance company in order to pay them to get the money back because it was not my fault. So why should they just be out of money? So it's their way of reimbursing themselves. But in law, they'll do indemnification. So we're going to see that with a lot because, again, as we know, I guess a legal motion we're going to learn is, you know,
And that seems to be
everybody
what is
pointing at
going
each
out.
other.
Listen, Johnda, thank you so much for joining us. You did such a good job, not only breaking this down, but answering a lot of legal questions that people have been floating. We all like to play armchair analysis, no more than me.
Yeah.
And it's nice we definitely had your criminal and civil. She is currently practicing expertise to actually let us know, like, okay, fine, you can make any argument. You can make the McDonald's ketchup argument, but this is actually what's going to move forward in court. And in the mind of a legal person, well, like you said, you can make any argument you want, but we're trying to win and we're trying to win as quickly as possible. And you balance between all the arguments you can get in against all the convictions you can actually get in a
Yeah.
reasonable time.
And it's
So
unfortunate, but it really, that's what it really does come down to, because from the standpoint of the court and the state, there's resources that go into trying cases. There is people's time that could be spent doing other things, because sadly the wheels of justice are always turning, because there's never a lack of cases that need to be tried.
exactly.
So if a case is just not seen as viable, or it's like, they're just not going to go with it 50-50. If they think maybe 70-30, possibly, but certainly not 50-50. So, or below.
Exactly. I will say one thing, you guys. Thank Jonda. Thank you so much. We are going to be back early. You guys are going to be able to catch me on Jonda's podcast. I'm going to put a link on her podcast in the comment
Mhm.
section. It's going to be pinned and also in the description box. But I said you guys never go to the description box, so I'll put it in the first pinned comment.
Well,
Let
put
us
it in
know
both
if you
places.
have
They may shock you.
Yes, let us know if you guys have any questions for next time Jonda joins us for a part 2 of this. She will be back, and we're also going to cover other cases on her podcast on my channel. I hope you guys really enjoyed her in-depth legal analysis. Again, we love to gossip, but we love when our gossips are what? Fact-based, or at least
There you go.
in the
We can show
realm
people
of
how smart we are. Thank you again, everyone, for listening to my appearance on the Tisa Tells show. I hope that you enjoyed the episode and it was interesting and informative. And despite the fact that it is a very heavy topic, I hope you appreciate that at moments we tried to keep it light and interesting. As you know, I always attempt to do over here on the Let's Be Honest with Just Johnda show, even when we have something that can weigh heavy on the spirit, like the Astroworld tragedy. As always, you can find me wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure that if you have Apple iTunes, that you go over there, leave me 5 stars in a review. You can find me on your social media outlets, Instagram and Twitter at Let's Be Honest JJ. That's at LETSBEHONESTJJ for Just Jonda. And of course, if you want daily fun and commentary, you can join on the Fashion and Drama Diaries on Facebook. Again, the link for that is in the bio. Feel free to leave me DMs with any of your questions, show suggestions, or concerns, as well as send me an email. I do check, and if it's legit, I do respond. As always, if you're thinking about it, clicking about it, linking about it, and want to talk about it, chances are I want to talk about it with you. So let's be honest together.